Hey monkeys, it's Jim from Small Time Outlaws, and this is the third video in this using Mojo in Monkey tutorial series. In this video, we'll be covering the use of images with Mojo. So we'll be loading up a couple images and scaling, rotating, and animating them. So the first thing we want to do is to set up the data folder for our project. So the way you do that is you go into wherever you have your Mojo file stored. In this case, I just have it in the tutorial folder. And I have it called Mojo 1. You need to create a folder that has the name of your main file and then .data. So kind of like this is where all your build stuff goes for HTML5 and everything. Here I've already created my folder, so you can just create, if you call your file main.monkey, it's going to be main.data. If you call it, mojo1.monkey, it's going to be mojo1.data. And then inside this data folder, you can see I've got my two images, explosion, which is it's going to be an animated image of an explosion, and then the ship, which is a basic ship. And have a zip file with these in them in the description box below, and you're free to use these images for whatever you want. So we're going to be using these for the next couple of videos. So yeah. Okay, so once you've done that, you're going to go back to our project, and in our My Game class, or whatever you call it in your class, we're going to create two fields, one for the ship image, and this is going to be of type image, and this is the image class that comes with Mojo. And then the next one is just going to be explosion, and that's also going to be the image type. And now in our onCreate, we're going to load our ship image using the load image function. And the first parameter that it takes is the path to the image you want to load, but not including the .data folder. So in this case, I don't have it in any other folders inside the data folder, so I'm just going to go ship.ping. That's just the name of the file. And the next parameter it takes is an optional parameter, which is the number of frames this image has. And in my case, it's just the one frame, one image, so you can just do one, or you can leave it off and just load like this, and then it'll do everything by default. But I'm going to show you that the third parameter is a property or a flag you want to give your image. So, and there are some properties that are just constants that come with that are just static constants that come with the image class. And so you know what they are. The first one is image.midHandle, and this one is this tells Mojo that you want this monkey or this image to be handled at the center, or it's this middle. So anytime you position it, it's going to position it on that spot, or it's going to position the center of the image on that spot. And if you rotate this image, it's going to rotate around the center instead of around the top left corner. And the next two, alright, let's go do all three. These are the padding, and what these do is they add padding to your image, which is just a transparent row of pixels. Either, I can show you after I type this up. So with the X padding, it's going to put a transparent row of pixels on the left and right side of your image. The Y padding is going to put rows on the top and bottom, and then the XY padding puts padding all the way around. And then finally, the flag that it uses by default is just default flags, and this is just 0, so it's got no flags, and so by default it has no padding, and it's handled in the top left corner of the image. We want to be able to rotate our ship so it looks like it's actually rotating like a spaceship, so we're going to have it handle at the middle, and I don't need to do any padding or anything. Okay, so that's how you load just a single image by itself, not an animated image or anything. So now to load our explosion image, we can set explosion to the load image, and this is just an overload of the load image function. So we pass in the file name, and then the next two parameters are the size of each of the tiles in the image, so the width and height. And in my case, my explosion tiles or frames are all 128 by 128. So I can put that in, and then the next one is the actual number of frames, the total number. And this explosion image has 30 frames. It's 6 by 5, I believe. And then also you can add how you want to handle it, and I want to be able to, when I explode my ship, I want it to explode right where the ship is, so I want to mid-handle my explosion image as well. And now let's get to drawing these images. So let's go down into our on render, and you can see I cleared out all the drawing primitive stuff. We don't need that anymore. And just so you can actually change the color of our images, I'm going to put the set color function back. And to draw this image, our ship, to start out, we'll just do draw image function. And the first parameter this takes is the instance of whatever image you want to draw. So in this case, the ship, which we've initialized here. So we'll just throw that ship variable there. And then the next two are its X and Y position. So just at the X and Y position on the screen. And the fourth is an optional parameter, and this is to designate which frame of the image you want to draw to the screen. And in this case, ship only has one frame, so you can leave this off altogether, or you can set it to 0. Doesn't matter. It defaults to 0. And now let's run this so you can see it. Come on. And there you go. There's our neat little ship, and it's tinted red. Now this is nice for tinting in other targets except for HTML5. It's been found that with HTML5, setting the color of images really causes extreme slowdowns because it actually has to go in and change the color of each pixel in the image every frame. So that, yeah, as you can imagine, that'll cause some severe slowdown. So it's recommended that you either pre-render images in different colors outside of Monkey, just in whatever image editor you use, or you can do like transparent overlays for your images if you want to change the color. But yeah, it's not recommended to use that color on your images at all, just because of the slowdown in HTML5, and it can go slow down the other ones as well. And alternatively, there's also another draw image type command, which is a draw image rect. And what this does, it will just draw a rectangular portion of the image you want to draw to the screen. So in this case, say we want to draw, and I'm going to put it, it's going to the same as draw image. It takes the instance and then the X and Y position. Then the next two parameters are the X and Y position of the rectangle you want to draw. So this is a position on the image, not on the screen. So in this case, I want to draw the center square of our image. So I'm going to offset it by 32 in the X and Y, and then it takes the width and height of this rectangle that you want to draw, and I'm going to do a 64 by 64 square, and just so you can see how it works. And there you go. There's our center portion of this same image redrawn over here. It's pretty cool, right? And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this set color. We don't need that. And I'll comment this out for now. Now let's do some fun things to our ship image, like, I don't know, rotate it around and scale it. For fun, right? Fun. So let's first, we're going to create an angle to store create a variable to store the current angle of our ship. And let's make another one to store the scale of our ship, and we're going to start it out. We'll say 0.2. Let's create another one. What this is going to do is going to increment our scale by a certain amount every frame. So we're going to put this stuff in the onUpdate method, so it updates at a nice somewhat constant rate, no matter how our onRender method is doing. So if it dips below our update rate, the Monkey will actually compensate. So in our onUpdate, let's increment our ship's angle by a little bit every frame, and then we're going to increment the scale by our little ship scale incrementer. Oh man, I keep spelling ship funny. Ship scale increment. And now what we're going to do is we're going to check if the ship scale is too big. And we're going to say 5 times its normal size. Or if it's too small, which we're going to say if it dips below our initial value, we're going to switch our ship scale incrementer from positive or negative, or from negative to positive, depending on if it's greater than our maximum value or less than. We're going to switch it so it'll go back down, then it's going to come back up and go back down. The way we'll do that is we'll set ship scale to be 0 minus its original value. So what's going to happen here is going to take the first time, it's going to be greater than 5. So let's go on here. It's going to say set ship scale inc to 0 minus ship scale inc, which is 0.1. So 0 minus 0.1 is negative 0.1. And it's going to start going back down using this. Start incrementing with a negative value. Then once it's less than 0.2, it's going to set it to 0 minus negative 0.1, which will be positive 0.1, and it'll start going back up. So now we're going to go into our draw image and we're going to overload it. And how we'll do that is after the ship and x and y position arguments, we're going to pass the rotation of the image, which in this case is our ship angle variable. And then the next two are the scale in the x direction and the scale in the y direction. And I want it to scale uniformly, so I'm going to pass the same value to the x and the y. So it goes, if I were to leave this as 1, then it would just go left and right a bunch. So I can actually show you that right now. So we scale, come on. There it goes, it's just scaling in the x direction. Woo! Woo! So I want to change this to scale in both directions, and now let's run that. And there it goes. Check it out. So that's pretty cool, right? So now let's say we want to explode this thing. I know that's what we've all been waiting for. So let's draw our explosion image to the screen. And we're going to put it right where the ship is, so our ship explodes, and run this, and it should just explode, right? Well, no. It's only drawing the first image of our explosion animation. We actually have to animate it ourselves. And to do that, we're going to start by creating a new field, and this field is going to store the current frame of our explosion. So we're going to call it explosion frame, and then it's going to default to 0, which is the first frame. And then down in our on update, and for the same reason as before, we put this on update so it will animate at a nice consistent speed instead of animating really slowly if on render starts to dip below our on update rate. We want to put it in on update so when it compensates, the animation will still kind of go at the right speed. And it's also going to be timer based, so that helps too. So to start, we're going to say what we want to do is, because this is going to be timer based animation, we're going to call the milliseconds function. And this is a function that comes with Mojo that gives you the number of milliseconds that have passed since the game started running. And now what we want to decide is for how many milliseconds we want each frame to be on the screen. So let's say we want it to be on the screen for 100 milliseconds at a time. So what this is going to do is, because we're dividing by an integer, or because we're storing this value into an integer, it's going to divide this number and then cut off any decimal values, because it can't put the float decimal values into an integer, so it's going to chop all that off. So starting out, for the first 100 milliseconds, or I should say the first 99 milliseconds, this value is going to return 0. And then for the next 100, from 100 milliseconds to 199, this value is going to return 1. And then for the next it's going to be 2, and for the next it's going to be 3. And so this is great. This is exactly what we want up until we start getting to, let's say, 3000 milliseconds or 3100 milliseconds. Then you're getting into 31, 32, 33, and then you got problems because we only have 30 frames in our image or in our animation. So to avoid that, what we'll use is the mod keyword. And if you remember, if you watched the operators video way back in the beginning series, what mod does is it divides this value by the next value, or the value on the right side, and then returns the remainder. So when we put in the number of frames, it's going to divide this by 30, or the number of frames, and then give the remainder. So starting out, it's going to be 0 mod 30, which is going to be 0. Then it's going to be 1 mod 30, and that's going to be 1. So once it gets up to 30, it's going to be 30 mod 30, which will be 0, so it's going to reset back to the first frame. Then when it's 31, it's going to be 1. And then 32 mod 30 is going to be 2, and then it's going to keep going. It's going to go up to 0 to 29, then it's going to go back to 0, then 29, up to 29, and back to 0. It's going to keep doing that. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So let's go back into our draw image function for our explosion, and we're going to set the frame to this frame variable, and now let's run it. And as you can see, it is now exploding, and it's exploding at, what is that, 10 frames per second. We want it to go a little faster than that. So to do that, you just change this to a smaller value. Let's say 20. So this now is going to go at, let's say 20 or 1000 milliseconds divided by 20. That's going to be 50 frames per second. Yeah, 50 per 1000 milliseconds. So let's see how that looks. And it's pretty fast, but I kind of like it. So it's just boom, 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 and it's done. So now let's say that's great. Let's have some more fun with it real fast before I close this video, because I like having fun. And what we're going to do is create 2 more fields. These are going to store the position of this explosion, and then each update, what we're going to do is every time the explosion resets, we're going to set those X and Y values, these X and Y fields, to random values, so that we get explosions at different areas of the screen. So it's kind of look like a fireworks show or something. So what we'll do is we'll set a local variable here. We'll call it previous frame, and we're going to set it to the frame of the animation before it checks and recalculates it. And then after it recalculates, we're going to check and see if the previous frame was 29 and it switched and reset to 0. So we'll check and see if X frame is now 0. And that means it went from the end of the animation to the beginning. We're going to reset our explosion X and Y values to random values. So we'll use the rand function, or RND function. And what this RND function can take is a value you want to get a random value for between 0 and this number. And you can also set it to be like between 20 and this number, so it's going to be a random value between 20 and 640. I'm just going to do 0 and 640, so you can do it like that. And that's the width of our screen, so it's going to be a random value in the X direction. And then for the Y, we'll just do a random for the height of our screen, which is 480. And we'll set that. And then we'll go back into our draw image and set this to exp Y, and this our exp X, and this to exp Y, and run it. And there you go. We got our explosion exploding randomly, and it looks like 4th of July or Boxing Day, or I don't know any more holidays. Those are the only ones I know internationally. And that's it. This finishes the video on loading and displaying images in Mojo. I hope you had fun, and I hope you join me for the next one. We're actually going into user input. We'll be able to fly this ship around a little bit, so stick around for that. Hope you learned something. If you have any questions, email me at jim@smalltimeoutlaws.com, or leave some comments down below, and I'll see you in the next one.